So I'm going to pick up on one of these Parallax 2.5D movie videos like you'd often see used in Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, kind of already in progress. I've got this picture of this, I don't know what it is, a squirrel or a chipmunk, and I've come in and I've now made two different layers. I have my original background where I've done nothing to it, and then I have made a mask of a copy of it on another layer. So it looks like this. I'm going to keep the varmint plus the log, and I'm going to keep that independent of the other thing. So I've got this set for the top layer, but the thing I need to do is I need to fix that bottom layer, because as of right now, even if I turn the top layer off, it's the original copy. Trees, log, varmint, and all that kind of stuff. So the next step that most of these videos tell you to do is to make a selection on the background layer. So to do that, I'm going to come up and I'm going to move my cursor over so I'm on top of the mask, and I get my little finger icon. And if I add the command button, I get a little marching ant box on top of that, which means make a selection. I know that's going to be difficult to see. After I've done that, I've now re-accessed this mask that I made on the top layer. I'm going to go ahead and hide the top layer, and I'm going to move to the background layer. And I'm going to come up to where it says select, and I'm going to go to modify. And normally I'm going to make a content aware fill in just a second, but in order to do that, I normally need my selection to be slightly bigger. Now, how much bigger is going to depend on what the resolution of your document is and everything, but for right now, I would just suggest that most of them tell you to go select, modify, expand by 10 pixels. And when you stare at that, you're going to notice that the selection is slightly larger than your original mask. And again, I need to make sure that I'm on my background layer, not the one with my mask anymore. So that this bar is highlighted. I go up to edit, I pull down to fill. I'm going to make sure that it says content aware. So if for some reason it said foreground, background, or white or black, just let it go on content aware. With the opacity at 100%, the mode being normal, which should be pretty much standard, and click OK. When that's done, it's going to go ahead and fix this. Now, there's so much detail going on in the background of this picture with the jungle that it probably looks just fine the way that it is. If as soon as you do this, you notice that there's a few streaks or flecks that are showing up that don't seem to be making any sense, you might want to come over and just clone a couple of those things out. Just keep in mind, most of the time, this background is going to be covered by your foreground object, which is clipped out. And also just the entire idea of the movement. Your eye is going to be fascinated on that front moving object, and it's not going to be paying much attention to the background. But still, just for the sake of argument, I'm going to come in here and clone out like 2 or 3 different things, just so that you can see that you can end up doing this if you think it's going to make your thing better. And then I come back and I turn on my mask, because right now all that's on this top layer is just my varmint, and all that's on the background layer is now my perfect background without the thing in the front. As soon as I'm done with that, most of these things suggest that I come and I click on background, and I turn that into a smart object. And then I do that with this object too. Come to my layer options and I go convert to smart object. That sometimes just helps protect the objects as you enlarge or as you shrink them. And then just to be on the safe side, I'm going to change the names of these layers so that I think it's going to make it easier for you to follow along on the video timeline part. So now that I have that done, I come up to where it says window and I pull down to timeline. There's a bunch of different options here, but your 2 big ones when you haven't made one of these yet is to click on this little arrow, and my 2 choices are create frame animation, which is great for making a banner ad and animating type, but when you're doing something as simple as a video, this create video timeline is the one that you want. And I'm going to click create video timeline. And more than likely what it's going to do is it's going to render out, I can see 10 frames, 20 frames, 1 second, because there's 30 frames in a second. 1022, 1023, 1024, 1025. So it made a 5-minute, not a 5-minute, a 5-second thing. The biggest area that people run into a problem on this is that I have to either have this selected, the varmint, or this selected, the background. So I'm going to start off with the background, and I'm going to go click to open this little caret, and I'm going to go ahead and do that for the varmint as well as I'm here too. But I'm on the background. In my video playhead, this red line with this big blue funky thing up here at the top is the playhead saying it's starting at 0. And at this point on my background, I'm going to click the transform button. And I get a little yellow dot there, and I get one here. And I'm going to slide this all the way to the end. And I too am going to hit, again, this little button here beside transform, and it's going to drop another yellow dot down. Now what it's saying is I can scroll back and forth to see those. I've got 2 yellow dots. Well, only the active one is yellow. The other one is this gray shape. What I'm going to say is on my background, I'm going to choose to make my background go from basically small or normal up to big. And then I'm going to have my varmint go from big to small. So I'm going to have them go in the opposite direction. So as soon as my video playhead is out here with this yellow dot and I'm on the background, I can just hit Command T or go up to Edit, Free Transform. And then I'm going to choose to do this. I'm going to hold the Option button down on my Mac and the Shift. And when I go grab one of these dots on one of the corners, if I enlarge, it's going to enlarge from the exact center. And I am using my little percentage sizes up at the top. And I see that the width and the height, I'm going to drag this up until it's about 130%. Just anywhere in there, 130, 131, something like that. And I'm going to let go. And in order to activate this tool, you have to hit the return button. And just to see what I've done, I'm going to slide this over to the playhead to the beginning, and I'm going to hit play. And it's going to show that that background is going to enlarge about 31% from the beginning to the end. Great. Now while my playhead, remember I went from small to big, so now I'm going to go from big to small. I'm sorry, I'm going to go from small to big, the opposite direction, which is generally how these things look best. The key thing here that you've got to do, you have to click on the other layer at this point. So my playhead is at the end, and now I'm on the varmint layer. I'm no longer on the background layer. I once again hit transform, and I'm going to leave that one the way it is. And then I'm going to slide the playhead all the way back to the beginning. And I'm going to hit the transform button one more time. And now as I'm staring at this, I can see 4 transform dots, a gray one, a gray one, a gray one, and now a yellow one, the yellow one always being the most active. Then I'm going to again go up to Edit, Free Transform. I'm going to hold down the Option and the Shift buttons. I'm going to also enlarge this one about 31%, something like that. I'm also, since I noticed that this one moves way off the page here, I'm going to go ahead and move him back so he's about sitting here like this. I've got to hit the return tool every time I use the free transform. It's the only tool in Photoshop where you have to hit the return tool after you're done using it to say activate. And now that my playhead is here, I'm going to hit play. And as I move, my squirrel or whatever he is going to get smaller and move down. And my background is going to get bigger. And I'm pretty happy with that. So at this point, I'm probably just going to go ahead and hit save. And then now if I ever had to come back to it, everything is in place, including my timeline dots, my smart objects, my masks, and everything. And then I need to go up to File, Export, Render Video. And now you're going to need to go back and check some other kind of setting thing to see what this looks like. But more than likely, you're going to say Adobe Media Encoder here. The format, probably this H.264. High quality. The document size is going to be the document size that your document is right now in Photoshop, unless you wanted to tell it to enlarge it or shrink it on the way out. Frame rate is 30. Just leave these other things pretty much the way they are and have this thing say all frames and hit render. And at that point, it's going to take maybe a couple of minutes, depending on the processor speed of your computer, to go ahead and render the video out. On some of them, I would definitely assume that it's going to take several minutes to be able to do this, but that is completely dependent on how many layers you have and the resolution of the document. And then I can come up in here and tell it that I want to go see, probably look at my video beforehand, and then hit play, and it should be pretty smooth as it's moving on out. One thing I will say is that sometimes in Photoshop, even Photoshop will tell you that the first time or so that you hit play, the preview in the timeline, this image may look very jerky as it's doing that. After you've done it 1 or 2 times, it will get smoother, but it definitely always looks better in the render video thing after you've actually made the video, rather than the preview that it gives you in Photoshop. So that's all there is to it.